It's finally here. The 2024 Vikings schedule has been released, and I'm alongside Viking Entertainment Network's Gabe Henderson and our Vikings analyst Ron Johnson to break it all down. This has become a yearly tradition for us, and I'm excited to get into this 2024 Vikings schedule. So let's pop that up on the screen and take a bird's eye view of how the Vikings start this season. And guys, I want to kind of break this down column by column, third by third. We'll start with weeks 1 through 6. The season opener on the road at the New York Giants, and taking on the 49ers in Houston in back-to-back home games. You go on the road to divisional foe Green Bay at the end of September before heading out to London for that international game and getting the week off afterwards. Ron, when you look at that schedule, what are your first impressions of how the Vikings start the year?
Well, as a former player, I'm like, man, the bye is way too early. Like, I wish, like, everybody wants it like 8 or 9 so that you literally have that halfway mark to recover. But going to have to play the Jets in London, I think that's going to be one of their toughest matchups as far as quarterback. We know Brock Purdy in that offense with the 49ers. But the best thing about that is you start the season with the Giants. Nothing against the Giants. I'm not hating on Daniel Jones. But it is a good way to start the season with a team like that versus a team like San Francisco or Houston. You get those guys a little later.
Gabe, what sticks out to you?
Yeah, just the fact that you played 3 out of 5 teams that were in the playoffs last year. I'm just looking at the New York Jets game last year also. I mean, they were a quarterback away from making the playoffs. So the fact that you have the 49ers, the Texans, and the Green Bay Packers, 3 teams that made the playoffs in a span of 3 weeks. When it comes to being battle tested, the Vikings will get that early, especially after the Week 1 game against the New York Giants on the road.
Yeah, it should be an exciting time to see another London game that early in the season. I know a ton of Vikings fans have been waiting for that game. They've been knowing about that one for a while now. But now that we're able to put the schedule all together, let's take a look at the next set of 6 games. This is weeks 7 through 12. So you've got a week to prepare for a Detroit team at home. Then you have Thursday night football, a short week, versus the Rams at SoFi. Then you hit a bit of an AFC South stretch. The Colts at home, 2 road games against Jacksonville, Tennessee. Then you go back on the road end of November at Chicago. Of course, as you can tell, there are 4 of those 6 games in the middle of your season are on the road. Ron, what do you notice from that?
11-24. I think everybody wants to see Caleb Williams. Like, what is this kid going to be? What kind of offenses are the Bears going to have? I mean, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Chicago, 3 road games back to back to back. That is a lot for these guys. And so mentally, you want to go into that stretch with a win over either the Rams or the Lions. I think the Colts is a winnable game, but you kind of want to have that 2-1 going into those 3, because I think all 3 of those on the road are winnable, but it's going to come down to health and who's still available at that moment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the 2 home games. So only 1 game at US Bank Stadium in the month of October, and only 1 home game at US Bank Stadium in the month of November. After that, like, you have all these road games, and those 3, I'm looking at the 4-game stretch right there. The Colts, the Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans, and the Chicago Bears. Those are 4 young quarterbacks. You get 3 of those guys on the road. 4 young quarterbacks in that span. Like, this is a very tricky portion of the schedule because, 1, you're going to be battle tested in the first 6, but once you start looking at this second 6 or the second third of games right here, it's pretty much toss-ups because you got so many young guys right there. So I'm excited to see how this Vikings team will fare coming off that first 6 games after that bye week.
Definitely. Let's move on to weeks 13 through 18. How will the Vikings end the season? At home, 3 games straight. You host Arizona. Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons return to US Bank Stadium. And then you round out the season with an indoors game, thank goodness, Chicago in December. Then you head out to Seattle, and then you host the Green Bay Packers. And obviously, we don't know the date of that final Detroit Lions game. That's on the road at Ford Field. So you're kind of rewarded for doing the whole 4 of the next 6 on the road with 4 of the 6 at home to end the season.
Not only 4 of 6 at home, but the entire month of December is warm for them. Like, Detroit's indoors,
Very true.
Green Bay's at home. Seattle shouldn't be too bad in December. And then you got Chicago at home, you got Atlanta at home, and Arizona. But for me, that December 1st means they're not playing on Thanksgiving. So we actually get to have Thanksgiving with our families. Nice. Maybe do some Black Friday
shopping.
shopping.
And no Christmas game.
Yeah.
And no Christmas game. Do some Black Friday shopping.
One thing I do know that the Vikings will get is battle tested. When you look at the final 6 games of the year, 4 of those are at home. I really believe if the Vikings can figure out, to pull off a few wins, some tough wins on the road in the middle of the schedule, the end of the year is very favorable for them. And I think, this Kevin O'Connell-led team will be ready with some of these games, especially with Kirk Cousins coming in town. Like, that's the game that everyone has circled But at the end of the day, when you have 4 of 6 to end the season at home, like this is when you're supposed to be playing your best football. So I'm excited.
And for me, I think down the stretch of this one too, like that 6, those 3 on the road you can win, these 6 at home you can win, or these 3 at home. So that's 6 games in a row that you can potentially win
and get on a run, right?
Get yourself on a run. We're going to Seattle.
And if you look also there, right, the 2 primetime games of the season, the Thursday night game against the Rams and that Monday night game against Chicago, 12-16, which is exciting to look at. Any final thoughts, you two, on the schedule as a whole?
I mean, I'm not going to give my schedule prediction.
You will in just a second.
I will later.
In just a second.
But the one thing I look at this is the defense for the Minnesota Vikings has added new blood, new youthfulness. I've talked to Blake Cashman on the phone a couple times. I've actually got to meet Jonathan Grenard as well because of Blake Cashman. Shout out. We're in a group text now. And just their youthfulness of how they just talk about the game, talk about being around Minnesota. It feels like they're going to give these guys a different boost. And I've seen that in sports happen before where the youthful movement comes in all of a sudden. I mean, think about Justin Jefferson and the Gritty, how that took over the NFL, and then Jamar Chase. I think this youthful defense is going to help this team propel, where the quarterbacks are going to be looked at more as a Brock Purdy, where let's manage it. Let our defense do what they can do, and you guys manage this offense and make a play when we need you to.
Oh, how the times have changed, huh?
It is crazy how they have changed, and I'm just thinking about just the home games. I know I talked about that before. In the month of September, you only have 2 home games. In the month of October and November, only 1, and then December, 4 home games at US Bank Stadium. Like, granted, you know, the home game that we play against the Jets is in London, so technically that's not at US Bank Stadium, but still, you're going to have to figure out how to win on the road this year. And that's something that this Vikings team, they did a really good job at it last year. But with this new regime, with the new era of Vikings football finally upon us, I'm excited to see what that looks like. What is the identity of this team offensively, defensively, special teams? So we will see what that looks like. But I think this is the most favorable schedule that the Vikings have had in a while. Granted, because you look at the Packers and the Bears game, that's not in December or January. So to Ron's point, we will be warm in December, and hopefully we are. Hopefully our quarterbacks and our offensive linemen and our running backs, they're warm, ready to go on this playoff push in the month of
Vikings
December.
fans, you got to clear your schedule for December because we are going to have a wild end of the season. Of course, you can get your tickets now on Vikings.com or the Vikings app. But before we get to Ron's predictions for the season, let's hear from Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell on what he thinks of the 2024 schedule.
We legitimately always look at the first game. You know, you look at the first game because you got to, you know, we've got a kind of an army of coaches around here ready to get into breakdowns and starting to build kind of the inventory so we can get a head start working on those games. Then you look at kind of what's to follow, what's the early travel like where, when do we get to open up the great US Bank Stadium and welcome our fans in to see our team in 2024. And you find that Thursday game, you find, this year we've got the great experience of going to London, in week 5 there, and you wonder where the bye is and just where those things are that from a standpoint of my job of planning out every minute of every day leading into every single one of those games, making sure we're doing smart things to help our players be at their best.
Okay, Ron, this is my favorite part of schedule release day, personally. It's when you get to make your predictions, and we appreciate you putting it all out in the line when you heard the schedule maybe 5 minutes earlier. So this is your day of predictions, and you have a history of doing this before. If you want to look at your predictions from before, in 2021, you predicted 12-5. In reality, the Vikings went 8-9. In 2022, you predicted 12-5. The reality was 13-4. You weren't far off. In 2023, you predicted the Vikings go 11-6, but the reality is 7-10. So we're going to put you to the test again, though. You've seen the 2024
that was
schedule.
Injuries, though, so I might have been
Put
right.
an asterisk next
Put an
to that
asterisk by that one.
Yes. But Ron, let's kick it off, though, with the opening game of the year. It's going to be against the Giants at MetLife Stadium, week 1. What you got?
On the road, the first game is always tough, but I am going to look at the fact that the Giants don't really know what their situation is at quarterback, and so I'm going to give the Vikings a win there. I think their defense is going to stymie Daniel Jones, and they're going to come out with a win in week 1.
Okay, moving on to week number 2, at home for the home season opener against the 49ers at 1-0.
That's the tough one. I'm not going to lie. Home opener, the energy's going to be there. They do have a chance to win that one because you do have that first time in the stadium for guys like Grenard and Blake Cashman being back home. I just don't know if that's enough to beat Brock Purdy, and so I'm going to make that a loss to the 49ers.
Okay. All right. Moving on to week number 3, home again against the Texans. What's the outcome?
Yeah, this is another coin flip one for me, but Stephon Diggs coming back home. You got Danielle Hunter coming back home. A young quarterback in C.J. Stroud, which the defense can, again, it's going to come down to the defense being able to just confuse these quarterbacks. Another young quarterback walking to this loud stadium. But the Houston Texans, this is a team that everybody's picking that could be in the Super Bowl.
Wow.
I think this is a loss for the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay, 1-2 heading into week 4, where you are at Green Bay. I should have looked at this first. You're at Green Bay.
Yeah, I hate to do this to the Minnesota Vikings. But going on the road with the Green Bay Packers, I think, again, you're in Green Bay for a lot of these Vikings going there. Now, this is an Aaron Jones reunion. Now, Aaron Jones might go out and want to rush for 200 yards. I hope that's the case. But I think early on in this season, the Packers are going to try to really show Jordan Love is their guy, and the Packers are going to get the win there.
All right, moving on to fancy London town. We're headed to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to face the Jets as the home team. What do you make of the game across the pond?
I'm not going to say any names, but people in VEN, some people, they want to talk about Aaron Rodgers. They want to talk about the defense of Quinnen Williams and my guy Sauce Gardner from Detroit. Shout out to Martin Luther King High School in Detroit. But I got a great tip from Paige that the Vikings are undefeated across the pond.
They are.
And so I'm going to give them the win over the Jets.
Shout out to Paige, who's been supplying us with these beautiful graphics all
Beautiful
the
graphics, great statistician behind the scenes.
She does it all.
And the fact that they continue to go over there and win,
exactly.
I think this is another opportunity. And the Vikings have a huge following. The Vikings London Twitter account was super excited the minute they figured out what day this game was going to be.
They can finally plan their fall.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a cool time.
Okay, so we got a bye week after that.
Yeah.
Vikings are 2-3 at that point, right before they head to Detroit and we host Detroit the next week, week 7. What do you think will happen in that one?
Yeah, so Brad Holmes has been doing the cycle and circling the wagons about how great his pick was. He just signed Jared Goff to huge money. Coming into the stadium with that running game, that eliminates the crowd noise. And so we know the way they want to run the ball, quick short throws to their tight ends. This is another team that could go to the Super Bowl. I mean, they're now one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl, if not go to the Super Bowl next year, them and the 49ers. That's two teams that were in the NFC Championship game back to back. So they lose to the Lions.
Yeah, tough start to the season, but you got the Vikings at 2-4 heading into week 8. Things gonna look up for us?
It's definitely gonna start to look up.
Okay, so Thursday Night Football against the Rams.
Yeah, short turnaround, but they're gonna beat the Rams on the road in LA.
Okay, I love it. Let's go to week 9. I like short, quick, right there.
Yeah, because this is where it gets fun. Anthony Richardson, young quarterback. He can't deal with it. He's going to hear about all the issues they had before here. Yeah. The greatest comeback in the history of the NFL. They're going to beat the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay, we got 4-4 now. We're an even 500 heading into week number 10. And that's going to be in Jacksonville. This starts a 3-game road span for the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Lawrence might win the hair competition, but he's not going to win this game. The Minnesota Vikings are going to beat the Jaguars. They're going to Jacksonville, so that means good weather for the Minnesota Vikings. And honestly, the Vikings fans travel well when they go to Jacksonville.
All right, well, it's a warm weather at a cold time of year, right? So week number 11 in Nashville against the Titans.
Yeah, Will Levis, another young quarterback, unexperienced quarterback. We know he has some great games down the stretch. But again, this is a team where I think no Derrick Henry, the Minnesota Vikings will win this game. Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson should be back by then. There's a lot of offensive weapons. And again, Aaron Jones, I think he's really going to start to show who he is within this offense by now.
The road swing continues, week 12 at Chicago.
For me, I think they are going to lose to the Bears. Okay. Caleb Williams, I don't know if he gets the best of them, but it's just in Chicago.
All right, moving on to week number 13. It's a home game against Arizona, welcoming in Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., great weapons. But again, I think the Minnesota Vikings get this one done. I think Kyler Murray with this defense, Josh Metellus and the way he roams around, he's going to confuse that team.
All right, still on the good side of things, 7-5 right now. Week 14, number 8 coming in, the former number 8 coming in. Kirk Cousins makes his return to US Bank Stadium.
Yeah, could be number 8, could be number 9. We don't know if Michael Penix Jr. will have taken over by now. We don't know if Kirk would have lost his job. But Kirk coming into Minnesota, we know it's going to be a storied kind of conversation. Everybody all week's going to talk about what are the Vikings defensive guys looking forward to. Kevin O'Connell, what is that handshake or hug going to look like? But I think they can beat the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons, like the way their weapons look right now, I don't know if they have enough to really get into the Vikings defense and get after them. They just have Kirk Cousins.
All right, 8-5.
Yeah.
Heading into the Monday Night Football game against the Bears at US Bank Stadium. The atmosphere will obviously be electric. What's the outcome?
Yeah, the crowd's going to be important in this game. You're going to have a night game, Monday Night Football, all the fans lathered up and ready to go. But the big thing about this one is Caleb Williams is coming into his own at this point in the season. The Bears are trying to make a playoff push. I think the Vikings take a loss here on Monday Night Football.
All right, 8-6 heading into Week 16. You're still in the playoff picture, and you're going on the road to face the Seahawks in Seattle.
Yeah, and this is the Seahawks. For some reason, in the past, they have figured out the Vikings, and they would always come back to Minnesota with a loss. They changed the narrative now. They're going to go to Seattle and get a win.
All right, cool. Let's move on. 9-6 going to a home game, Week 17 against the Packers.
Packers.
Ugh.
Walking into US Bank Stadium. I think they win this one.
Okay.
Because you have the Packers coming home. I think they're going to split with them. Again, crowd. The Vikings crowd gets underrated sometimes on how important they are to keeping that offense. And Jordan Love, we saw him get confused last year.
Sure.
I think this is an opportunity for them to win a game against the Packers and still win in the division.
All right, okay, you heard it from Ron. Here we go. Heading into that final week, the division could be on the line when the Vikings head to Detroit to face the Lions at that point. TBD on timing, so we're not sure what the atmosphere will be like in Detroit. Pretty crazy all the time, but how do you see this one going?
TBD on who plays in this game, because for the Lions, they're probably have already clinched the NFC.
Okay.
They probably maybe have clinched where they're at. Now, if they have to win this game in order to maybe jump the 49ers or something like that to get that first, overall, they are going to play all their guys. But if they are like locked into the 2 or the 3, they're not going to. And so the Vikings could win this one. But I will say, I think the way Dan Campbell is, and we've seen the last couple of years, he doesn't care about that. He wants to win at all costs. And so unfortunately, they might finish with a loss.
Okay.
But I don't think that means they're out of the playoffs.
I love that. You think they will qualify for the playoffs this year, 10-7 as their 2024 record. Ron, we appreciate you putting your reputation on the line for this every single season.
I have to deal with it. It's going to come. People tell me what you think. I already know what some people think.
Sure.
But I think it comes down to defense, and that's going to be the key this year. And the name of the season is going to be, how does the defense fare?
All right, now you can go plan your fall schedule. I will as well. Hopefully you guys too. Tickets are on sale at Vikings.com and the Vikings app. Please go get them. We want to make sure that it's the best home environment in the NFL. Thank you so much for tuning in.